But first, we have the author of Too Much and Never Enough, Mary Trump.
Welcome back to the new abnormal, Mary Trump.
Molly, it is awesome to be back. Hi, Jesse. I can't believe how long it's been.
Yeah, it has been. But you are still like a very frequent flyer on the new abnormal.
Oh, cool. I like being a frequent flyer on the new abnormal.
It's true. We mix our Jong metaphors here. Your uncle didn't pay his taxes?
I'm shocked by this development, I have to say.
It's shocked, I tell you.
Yes. I think that's the circumstance for which the phrase knock me down with a feather was invented.
So the big question is, will there be more indictments? There are certainly people in this filing who are not identified. And, of course, there's the fact that they kept two sets of books, which would sort of point to Trump having some knowledge, right? And, of course, the reason they kept two sets of books was to make sure that Alan Weisselberg didn't make over $950,000 with all of these perks that they weren't paying taxes on.
This is a pattern of very long standing. This is right out of my grandfather's playbook. And what gives me some confidence that, one, there's more to come, and two, this will end up mattering, is because the kind of fraud that's being alleged here is like exactly the kind of thing my aunts and uncles did to me. And because of that, you know, patterns strongly imply intent, right?
Yes. Can you just, for the people who don't know, explain a little bit of what they did to you?
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry to make that ridiculous assumption.
I know exactly what you're talking about, but just because my dad listens too.
Oh, okay. Hi, Molly's dad.
He's great. You would love him.
Okay, cool. So here's a really quick summary. After my dad died, my aunts and uncles were my fiduciaries. They were, you know, supposed to help protect my investments. And one of those investments was in a partnership called Midland Associates that essentially my grandfather's core business, Trump Management, paid to manage his properties. And then in the 80s, after my dad died, they created a shell corporation called All County, which the purpose of it simply was to siphon money away from both Midland Associates and my grandfather's business. One, just to steal money from me, because the beneficiaries of All County were only my aunts and uncles and their cousin John. And two, to devalue Trump Management so much that when he died, they were able to claim it was only worth $30 million and thereby avoid paying almost $500 million in estate taxes.
So they were trying to cheat the children of their brother who had died tragically.
Yes, but also to a much larger extent, their state and their country.
Yes, as we know, only the little people, right, which is us, pay taxes.
This is exactly right. So, you know, that's the pattern. And it's heartening, I think, that these things are happening around the same time. You know, one, it helps my case, but I think my case also sets a precedent for what this case is, the fraud case is hopefully going to show. And the fact that it doesn't just say this only happened for Alan Weisselberg, it says employees, right?
Right.
So if there are two sets of books for Alan, there are two sets of books for other people. And I think we're also going to find that in these millions of pages of documents, there will be more evidence. So either they're not going to be solely relying on Alan Weisselberg to flip, because either there's documentary evidence of Donald's direct wrongdoing, or there will be other people who might be more willing to flip than Alan. And I think among those might well indeed be my cousins.
Oh, interesting. Like the Trump kids?
You know, the brilliant Suzanne Craig and Russ Buettner last year published a very long investigative report about how, as an executive of the organization, Ivanka also received, I don't remember the amount, but at least hundreds of thousands of dollars in quote-unquote consulting fees. That's not a thing. You're either an employee or you're not an employee. So I think we're going to find a lot more of that kind of thing going on. And she's much less likely to stay loyal than Alan Weisselberg.
Wait. You think Ivanka is less likely to stay loyal than Alan Weisselberg?
Yeah, I do.
Even though her dad gave her a job in the White House?
I know, shocking.
Right? I mean, Alan didn't go to the White House.
No, but Alan stayed back. I don't know that Alan would have wanted to go to the White House.
I don't think Alan could have cleared the security clearance.
Well, did any of them? Come on.
Right.
Who cares?
Exactly.
But Alan had a pretty cushy gig where he was. And I think kind of in the grand scheme of things, as counterintuitive as this might sound, I think Ivanka has one, more to lose, and two, more to hang on to. Her husband's family is legitimately very wealthy.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of an Ivanka Trump, like, turning on, I mean, he's got such an Oedipal thing. Is it Oedipal? Is that the...
Oh, Oedipal. I thought you said edible.
Yeah. No, is it Oedipal, though, when it's the parent, or is it just molestation?
No,
I mean, what is it?
Incest and pedophilia.
It's incest, right. But he has some kind of obsession with her. So the idea that, I mean, the idea that she would somehow flip on him feels almost Shakespearean.
Yeah, low rent Shakespeare for sure. Because look, the most basic thing to understand about his relationship with his kids and their relationship with him is that they're transactional and they're conditional. So somebody's always got to be getting something. And the only exception might be Donnie because he's so damaged in the way that the other two aren't.
It does strike me that he's so damaged.
It's especially interesting now that we get to see the difference between Andrew Giuliani and Dodd Jr., where it seems like Dodd Jr. just looks more pathetic.
Which is stunning.
Stunning. Why is that?
That he's so broken?
Yeah. I mean, their three kids grew up in the same house around the same time, and he seems significantly more broken than the other two.
It is never a good thing in the Trump family to be the oldest son.
Yeah.
In fact, none of them probably understands this. Donald, as you mentioned from the very beginning, had this fascination with Ivanka from the time she was little and had no use for his sons. And probably, I'm not privy to this because they're so much younger than I am, first of all. And secondly, I only saw them on holidays and maybe Mother's Day. That, like his father before him, Donald was very, very hard on Donnie. So I think the combination of realizing that he was always going to fall short and that nothing he did would get him the attention he craved. And probably one of the worst things is knowing that in this generation, being a woman was not necessarily a strike against you as it absolutely had been in Donald's generation. So, the fact that Ivanka leaped over Donnie and landed well with him. Plus the addictions, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it is just so interesting to watch. The thing that I'm struck by, which I feel like is something that you, as someone with a background in mental health and also a background in being in that family, can speak to, and it's something that I feel passionate about as as someone who's managed to squander familial fame in my own life. It does seem like these kids are really they had this opportunity to sort of take over the Republican Party, and they are just not interested.
I don't know necessarily that they're not interested, although they would probably think it's beneath them in some regard. Yeah, totally. I think it's more that they have no capabilities.
Yes.
Donald didn't raise them to be successful or to succeed him. He raised them to support him. And he didn't teach them anything. And I know that from my own experience. I mean, not only were they, robbing me blind, but they didn't teach me anything about how to manage money or how to, be fiscally responsible or how to invest. Nothing, because they're not interested in helping anybody else if they think it's at all to their disadvantage. So basically, Donald raised a bunch of cheerleaders who have absolutely no tools to live in the world, which is fascinating because that's exactly what his father did to him in a slightly different way.
Because you think like Don Jr. is so popular in the Republican Party. He could run for any congressional seat in a red state and probably win.
Which tells us everything we need to know about the Republican Party.
Right. It's true. It's not a great sign for where the Republican Party is. But you see, and Eric's wife, too, had this opportunity to run for Senate and is not going to do it. And you really see, you would think that they're power hungry, but it's like they're too incompetent to be power hungry.
Well, I think they're too incompetent to be power hungry, and they're too incompetent to understand how it works. Like, you don't just, I was going to say something incredibly stupid. I was going to say, you don't just run for president right out of the gate.
Right.
My bad. But, that was the zeitgeist then, and, hopefully lightning striking 4 times, and that won't happen again.
Yes,
but
let us pray.
They don't have the work ethic.
Right.
I mean, neither did Donald, obviously, but for whatever reason, and we're going to be trying to figure this out until we die, for whatever reason, it didn't matter with him. In fact, for him, it was an asset.
Yeah.
But again, they also don't have his connections. They don't have his power. They don't have his presence. They don't, they didn't build up a following the way he did.
Yeah.
So, why would Ivanka Trump condescend to be a lowly congressperson?
Right. I mean, it's just sort of fascinating to watch them kind of disintegrate as their father leaves office and not be at all able to kind of keep that momentum going. It does, as someone who, comes from a family where that happens a lot, it speaks to me, this idea of like having this powerful narcissistic parent who has this sort of moment. I mean, it just is sort of interesting. So what do you think happens now? Like, there's so much talk. Will he run again? Will he not run again? It seems inevitable to me that he absolutely does run again.
Yeah, there was a point at which I thought definitely not, because he lost so badly and wouldn't want to risk that again. But as usual, and I need to stop doing, like, somebody needs to get a cattle prod every time and zap me with it every time I forget that the Republican Party is never going to do the right thing. Thanks to them, he's still relevant in a way that I would not have anticipated on November 7th.
That's true.
So that does change. That changes the calculus a lot, especially since they're doing this transformative thing with January 6th and basically making him out to be the hero of it somehow. And in the same way, they're going to take these fraud cases and either make him a martyr or make it seem as though, hey, he did this because he's brilliant.
Right.
Not because he's a criminal and anti-American.
Yeah, I mean, it just strikes me, it's like they've kidnapped themselves. It also seems like he'll run because it will keep him from being arrested.
Well, running won't, but yeah, winning certainly would. I think there's a possibility that he'll pretend to run.
Right, that's what I think too.
And, grift as much as he can grift. And then, because I think this is exactly what happened last time. He wasn't really running. He was pretending to run. And then suddenly he's doing well in the polls. And because he's a coward, he would never have decided to run unless he had some assurance that he was going to win, quote unquote win. And I think that, that changed, obviously, when every horrible thing that came to light boosted him in the polls. He basically was like, oh, wow, I can just be my horrible self and win this thing.
It's true.
Which then got him in the general election close enough to steal it, which he did.
And the Republican Party was like, let's go.
Exactly. And that's what concerns me more than anything else right now. Let's be honest. Donald did everything in his power to steal this last election. He tried really, really hard, at least from the call with Zelensky on down, if not before that, and probably before that.
To the postmaster.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he still lost, not by enough, but still by a significant margin. So I think that's what we can attribute these voter suppression laws to, because they know that if they suppress just enough votes, he doesn't need to win that much, or he could even lose by a fair amount and still, quote unquote, win. I think that's what all of this is about. And thanks to the completely corrupt Supreme Court, the mountain we have to climb has just got even higher.
Yeah. Oh, so depressing. You have written about and you continue to have a real view on the mental health crisis that we're in now on the way out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
What do you feel like? Do you feel like it's worse than you thought it would be? Do you feel like it's about the same? I mean, do you think, like, the thing I'm struck by is we have all of these shootings and no one is connecting them to the mental health crisis.
Extraordinary. Yeah, well, that's historically one of our biggest problems. We don't connect things. We don't have a grasp of how things relate to one another. I mean, I can make a case that one of the many reasons, but still a significant reason where we are is because Robert E. Lee got away with it.
Right.
So I'm actually more concerned, one, for the reason you just mentioned, but two, because what I didn't factor in, I said months ago that I thought we wouldn't understand just how severe the mental health crisis is going to be until we start emerging. And I think, I'm certainly not the only person who said that, but that's definitely being borne out. What I did not anticipate was that this country, or many people in this country, would still continue to be so irresponsible, so selfish, and so deluded that we would be looking at more spikes in COVID and now new variants that may in the long run be able to find their ways around the vaccines. Thus far, we've been quite lucky. But if people continue to get infected at the rates they're getting infected and spreading COVID, then that's going to change. Because this is a very wily, durable virus. And what are people going to do if faced once again, with another lockdown? That's the other reason I think it was a huge mistake to go from 0 to 60 the way even New York has. It's insane to me that one day everybody has to wear a mask, next day nobody does.
Right. This is so interesting. Mary, please, will you come back soon and talk to us more? When your book comes out, will you come back?
Oh my God, I love being here and hanging out with you guys. And I hope it's definitely not as long as it was last time.
Yes, me too.